Hi everyone, Mrs. Anderson again. This is Chapter 5, Section 3, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So far for this chapter, you have 3 assignments to do in your notes. Number 1, you need to answer the question about the Electoral College. Number 2, you need to answer the questions about Alexander Hamilton. And number 3, please answer the checks and balances questions at the end of the last PowerPoint. Please notice how short the law of the United States is. This is a picture of the actual Constitution. It allows for flexibility and changes to occur and amendments to be made in the future. The Founding Fathers didn't have to take every possible contingent into account. After all, how would they have known all of the problems that would arise over the centuries? They wrote into the document how it could be adjusted for time, and the change didn't have to have a unanimous vote. The essential questions, we basically are going to summarize the arguments for and against ratification of the Constitution and explain some of the principles of the Constitution. Terms and people, once again, please make your flashcards. All right. How did Americans ratify the Constitution, and what are its basic principles? Although many delegates to the Constitutional Convention felt the Constitution was imperfect, all but 3 delegates signed it. The idea was, this is the best we're going to get. Let's put it into law. So, would the states accept the proposed plan? And if not, what would become of the new nation? They really needed all 13 states to accept the Constitution. By drafting a new Constitution, the delegates had exceeded their mandate to amend the articles. Remember, it wasn't a constitutional convention. The convention was called to amend the Articles of Confederation. Only 9 states had to ratify it at first for it to be law in those states. However, those 9 couldn't live without the other 4 and vice versa, so special ratification methods were attempted. Special conventions with special elected representatives were held to determine ratifications within the states. Federalists favored the Constitution. Federalist sounds like a political party. Remember, members of the convention called Federalists favored a strong national government, thus the Constitution. They would definitely favor it. They were led by James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, who, along with John Jay, will publish a series of essays called the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were all essays signed Publius. It refers back to the Roman Empire, or the Roman Republic, actually. Alexander Hamilton will write 52 of them. James Madison will write 28, and John Jay will write the remaining 5. All the essays were anonymous. However, authors were identified by writing style. The Federalist Papers were written to help convince New York primarily to ratify the Constitution, and they were published in the newspaper. Please notice how much Hamilton wrote. He not only wrote more essays than the other 2, but his were much, much longer. Please notice the order in which the papers were written. To begin with, they stress the importance of a union in the first place. Then they stress the defects of the Articles of Confederation and why the Constitution needed to be written. They argue for a Republican form of government next, and then they go over the 3 branches of government, with the remaining couple dealing with conclusions and miscellaneous ideas. In Federalist number 10 and Federalist number 51, Madison argued that a strong national government and the Constitution's system of checks and balances would strengthen liberty. Madison strongly supported separation of power and a system of checks and balances and a strong national government. Please keep your eye on James Madison as the semester continues. His views will change. In Federalist number 78, Hamilton wrote of the importance of a judicial branch to protect liberty. Now for your next assignment. The assignment is on page 157 in your book. Please answer question 2 in a few paragraphs in your notes. The two most trusted Americans, George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, favored ratification. This will be enough for most people, actually. Frontiersmen felt a stronger government provided protection against the Native Americans and the British in the Northwest. Remember, the British are supposed to be gone per the Treaty of Paris, but they remain. Artisans in the cities and most newspapers supported ratification as well. Anti-Federalists, another political party that is developing, were opponents of ratification. They feared a loss of liberties and distrusted the absence of a Bill of Rights. That will be the first thing done when Congress gets together in the House of Representatives. They will write the Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists feared concentration of power in a distant elite, believing instead that power should remain in democratically elected state governments. Anti-Federalists were states' writers. They distrusted a strong central government, fearing the return of a monarchical type of government. The leading Anti-Federalists included Sam Adams, John Hancock, and Patrick Henry. Anti-Federalists included many farmers. They feared the Constitution threatened state debtor relief laws, which rescued many from foreclosure. Farmers also distrusted lawyers, merchants, and the wealthy, who were largely Federalists. The Federalists pushed for fast approval. By mid-January 1788, 5 states had ratified, but 9 states were needed. Federalists gained the support of Massachusetts Governor John Hancock by hinting he might be picked as the first vice president. We all know that John Adams will be the first vice president. When the Federalists agreed to add a Bill of Rights, 4 more states quickly ratified. While 9 states were the minimum, the 2 largest states, Virginia and New York, were necessary for the nation to survive. Overall, the 4 states that held out were Rhode Island, New York, Virginia, and North Carolina. New York finally ratified, but not because of the Federalist Papers. But the reason they ratified was because New York City threatened to leave the state. Not unusual that New York City views things differently than the rest of the state. Congress convened in New York's Federal Hall on March 4, 1789, to elect a first president. George Washington was voted unanimously. The person that got the second highest number of votes was made vice president, and that will be John Adams of Massachusetts. The first thing they were going to do was add a Bill of Rights. The last 2 states, Rhode Island and North Carolina, now reconsidered earlier rejections and ratified as well, bringing the total to 13 states. You needed all 13 to make it the United States of America. 2 lonely states not ratifying the government, eventually they would have to. I don't see how they could have survived without it. James Madison was assigned to create a Bill of Rights. Remember, he's the father of the Constitution. He will write the Bill of Rights as well, using Virginia's as a model. Madison avoided any statements about equality that might offend the slave states, and 10 amendments guaranteed individual freedoms. To prevent future abuse or limitations on freedom, any unmentioned rights were retained by the people. The 10th Amendment is very important. Please read the first 10 amendments on page 179 to 181 in your book or on the next slide. Please relate in your notes the importance of the 10th Amendment. Yet another assignment. And here are the Bill of Rights. The Constitution established a representative government based on 6 principles. Listed are 6 very important principles of the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution is a short document which allows for amendments later and even describes how these amendments are to be voted on right in the document. This is incredibly important. The next chapter will see Washington as president and the beginnings of political parties. Hopefully, you have noticed the big difference of opinions already. And that is it for Chapter 5.